me again. I'm just going to go over at the very beginning some just some notes that I wrote as far as your lesson's concerned, and it's just the basics. I wrote down. I noticed I counted 18 kids in the class, 10 girls, 8 boys. When I walked in, all the kids were in pairs, and it was all set up and organized. They were all sitting up straight. They were all attentive and all focused, and I'm really impressed with that because I've been in a lot of classrooms where 3 of them sleeping in the back or people are not paying attention. But you, and it wasn't just that they were. There was the setup that you provided going into that lesson caught their attention, and they were totally engaged, absolutely totally engaged, and I was really impressed with that. Yeah, other things I noticed is that you're just a natural leader. I mean, your tone of voice, your presence, you weren't demanding, but yet you just have a real balance about how you approach the kids. You know, the lesson that I observed was the day after the testing. So yeah, that was like the kids are tired. You mentioned I'm tired. You're tired. You let them know that I understand, but we still have to go over this because you're going to get a chance to take the test. And so if you didn't do well, and so you gave them relevance as to why you're still going to push them to pay attention and to learn something that day. I thought that was big. And again, the whole setup of that class I thought was really impressive. Really impressed, yeah, with that. So anyways, so what I want to do today is I want to go through the rubric that I shared with you the other day. And I just kind of want to go through here and really ask you questions about where you feel you were at, right? And maybe if we have a disagreement on something, we can have a discussion about it, okay? So the first section is the standards and objectives, right? And so the rubric talks about, number 1 on the rubric is that the content standards are explicitly communicated. Now, so you have the rubric and you have exemplary, proficient, and unsatisfactory. As far as the content standards, any thoughts about number 1 there?
Well, I mean, they could have been, I really didn't communicate them explicitly because I just said star review.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it was a tough lesson because you're really reviewing everything that was covered on the star. So
should I have listed every single thing? Do you think
I don't know about that. No, normally in a lesson you're covering a certain standard, and it's easier. You have your objective, your learning objective on the board, and the idea is to get them not only for you to state it, but to get the kids to state it. So at the beginning and at the end of the lesson, that the kids actually know that we covered this. This is the activity we did, and then at the end of the lesson, you try to ask them again. But this was one of those activities that you were really covering a lot of content, right? You covered, it was a review session for what they covered on the STAR. So I'm not sure, but I like to see standards and I like to see objectives. But if it's not something that's covered, that's not something that the school is doing school-wide, then, I could see why it wasn't up there, and especially with that lesson. Okay, so number 2 on here is were there any sub-objectives or were the sub-objectives aligned or logically sequenced to the lesson's major objective? So let me read that again. Sub-objectives are aligned and logically sequenced to the lesson's major objective. I mean, the activity that was done and the content that was covered in each section. So each group had different questions, and those questions were all aligned to standards that they had to cover that you had covered previously. So I felt you agreed that what was covered in that lesson covered all the sub-standards were aligned to the standards.
Yes.
We're good. Okay. Was there anything about that you want to add that you would have liked to change?
No, I just kind of wish they could have added more, but sometimes, like with our kids, you can't give them too much. So to me, like 9 stations, that was a lot. Usually, like I'll divide my room in half and have like 5 stations on this side, 5 on the other, or even 4 and 4, and then just like station 1, but they only rotate on one side. So to me, having 9 different stations, like that was a lot, and especially since each station had multiple questions, it was kind of a lot for them. But they did pretty good.
So set up the whole activity for me. even though we're not in that section. Set it up because we're already talking about it, and I want to make sure that it's covered on film.
Yeah, so basically it was like a circle, as much of a circle as I could get with all my desks. And there were stations, the index cards, and it had a question or multiple questions. So it might have asked like one big question. So I asked, what is the rate of change? What are the coordinates for the y-intercept? Write the linear equation. And I had given a graph. That was the little picture. And then another one asked for like a word problem. They had to come up with a word problem that would match or fit the graph. And so it does align with like all the sub-objectives are aligned.
So when you were
within that
preparing,
one
and
question.
when you were preparing the note cards, you were thinking about sort of the power standards or the essential standards. Otherwise, you wouldn't have. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you hit. Do you feel that you hit the major standards that needed to be covered?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. That's really about this. This entire first section is about that.
But
what
as
if-
far as the other one that you had asked, like about the setup and what I wish I could have changed, I wish I could have included and covered more objectives. I wasn't able to cover all of them like I would have hoped to, but that's what I would have changed.
And the time of the period is really, well, that's actually a double block, is it?
Yeah, so there's 90 minutes, there's plenty of time. It's just sometimes,
It could be overwhelming.
yeah, for them.
Yeah.
Or even like, cause 5 minutes for my first period was not enough time. So it's like, okay, 6 minutes. Well,
Oh, per group.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then for them to submit their answers and all that jazz.
Yeah.
That kind of.
Now, what about stretching that activity into like a 2-week deal where, okay, they had just taken the stars, so again, a lot of people blow off that time, right? I felt that it was appropriate. I mean, you tied it into the day before, you explained to the kids, hey, this is why we're doing it. A lot of you guys, you may have only missed, passing the test by 1 point, so we want to make sure. And they totally bought in. I mean, I saw 100% of your kids bought into the reason why you need to do this. There was no pushback from the kids. That was all set up nice and neat. But could you have extended this so you cover all the major standards? Do you think that would it be a good idea to extend it out? 2, 3, 4 days, maybe even 2 weeks, or not? What are your thoughts?
I think right now for a review, I think that would be a great idea. I mean, maybe weeks at a time or just 1 week and just day by day. Break it down might be good, especially since they still have their second chance in the second administration.
When will you find out which kids passed the test and which kids
April
didn't?
19th.
April 19th. So between now,
Yeah.
so in a couple weeks. So in the next couple of weeks, do you foresee yourself doing a similar activity,
Oh, yeah.
doing spiral review? And then at that point on April 19th, how will things change for you, given some kids passed and some kids didn't? Are things going to change?
Yeah, hopefully. We're supposed to get some subs in the building to watch our students who didn't, to teach our students who did pass.
Yeah.
And then once who didn't pass, Ms. Thomas, our teacher of the year, she and I are going to split the kids who didn't pass.
Really?
And be able to focus. Hopefully, that's what we're hoping for. But if there's a ton of kids who didn't pass, then it's going to be a challenge to figure out how to do it. Or if there's a ton of kids who did pass, it's going to be a challenge to get those subs. I mean, because basically the subs are going to be babysitting. That's what it's going to be. So
I like the idea of you're differentiating instruction for the kids that need more, and you're doing it during the school day, and I think those are good ideas. My question to you is really about pacing. So then, okay, if the START test is given at the end of March, and really after that it's really working with the kids that didn't pass, right? It's trying to get everybody passed. Then you're cutting into the year. So does that mean that you cover all the standards by March, or do you speed up the pacing so fast that everything's covered between the beginning of the year and the middle of March?
basically, but our district, we have our district assessments, and so they let us know, boom, these are the objectives you guys need to cover. You have 26 days. 2 of those days we have professional development, so you know that you can't, you take away days. So they let us know everything is broken down. They give us a suggestion. This specific client as an objective, you should be teaching for 8 days. This one for 11 days.
So they've already done the thinking, and they cram everything in that time period.
Right.
It's all crammed in.
Right.
That's interesting. I think that's great. Actually, I had to do that at my last school, so I think it's great that it's coming from the district.
It's nice, yeah, but I mean,
It does not.
it's not always reality for our school,
Of
for
course.
our kids.
Yeah. Sometimes you need more time.
Right, and I'm sure that's what every
Yeah.
campus.
Right. Okay. So that thanks for that. Okay, number 4, expectations of student performance are clear, demanding, and high. On that rubric, how do you feel you did on that?
Oh, pretty good.
Student expectations, clear, demanding, and high.
5.
A 5. I top, yeah, that was, I thought you did a great job with that. Number 5, state standards are displayed and referenced throughout the lesson. So that's back to that original. And there's not, we talked briefly before we went on camera. There's not a lot. I mean, I was really impressed with that lesson. Really impressed. There's not a lot of coaching there. Outside of maybe the checking for understanding that we're going to get into and that kind of thing. But I would say that I think that talk to me about how could you have folded in the standards into that so the kids know exactly what they're covering so that they have some awareness of what they're doing and to what standard that is that they were going through.
Maybe at each station, I could have listed, this is what you're supposed to be able to do, and you have those standards there. But at the same time, I want them to be able to read a word problem and know, oh, this is asking me for volume, not surface area. I don't know.
Right,
I guess I could
right.
have had them posted throughout.
Would that be helpful? You've been a teacher 5 years. Could that help kids, or is it not helpful?
No, it does help kids because whenever, if this were just a normal lesson and we were just talking about surface area, I would let them know, by the time you leave here today, I need you to be able to calculate surface area. I need you to be able to identify, and that's how I do my lessons. Like, so-and-so, read the objective, so by the end of today, and then I'll just piggyback off of it.
Right.
By the time you walk out of this door, this is what you should be able to do.
Right.
If you can't, and you can come back tomorrow,
Well, so that could be an area that we could talk about for the next cycle. Maybe that could be an area of focus that if you decide to do this activity again, and you may be because it sounds like you're going to be doing this for a couple weeks, right? Maybe that's something we can talk about. All right, so let's just get through the first section. Otherwise, we're going to take 2 hours here. The next section is on the actual activity, and we've already kind of briefly been talking about the activity. But set it up for me real quick again, and then we'll go through these.
Okay, so it's a circle. Basically, each there were 9 different stations. Cards. Kids are working in partners, so the desks are put together. 2 partners per station, and they just had to read the index card and answer the questions.
Yeah.
And they also had a recording sheet to where they were required to show their work.
And did you? Okay, so we'll talk about that in a second. So number 1, activities support. Did the activities support the lesson objective?
Yes.
Your thoughts?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 2, were the activities challenging for students? Absolutely, all of them. Yeah. Number 3, sustained student attention.
For the most part, yeah. For the kids, and for the most part, yeah. I think it really did. I did have a couple of kids that I had to redirect.
Well, and at the very beginning, you said, okay, if you're not going to be able to get along with your partner, this is your opportunity to get up and switch partners. However, you're going to be held accountable. If you choose a different partner, you better not just be choosing your friend. You better go to someone that you're going to be able to get work done. You gave them that choice up front, which I thought was really neat. Nobody took you up on it except for one girl got up and moved over to the side. But the way you set it up, it wasn't, what it communicated to me was you communicated options and choice to kids. So they had some sense of, hey, I like that. And I think possibly that's why you had very little problems with the kids. I mean, they were focused, except for all the boys. The one thing I was going to suggest is it was heavy on one side with the girls and in the back the boys.
Like that.
And it's almost like, and then because they're rotating, they're always going to sort of be to the right or to the left of each other. So maybe be mindful of that in the future. Say, okay, we're going to be a little more strategic where you put the boys, mix them up with the girls so that they're not, because once 2 boys kind of start slouching, then the other ones are going to kind of get tired of doing this thing and they're going to watch, so I think it might just be harder to manage a group. Although I will say this, that the group was well managed. It wasn't like that was an issue, as far as I could tell. So number 4 on here talks about eliciting a variety of thinking. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I do, because some questions were pretty quick, like, oh, okay, this is it. And I'm like, wait, miss, I don't understand. A 2/3 full, do we have to subtract? Do we need to multiply? So it did. Some of them were given.
Some of them were higher order kind of
yes.
problems, and some of them were more lower order kind of problems. Okay. Number 5, provide time for reflection. What were your thoughts on that? Did that activity give kids a chance to reflect
Maybe, because I mean, like I told you, we used the handhelds and we went over the answer. Basically, I just graded them. And so we didn't actually get to, so most of the kids missed this one, so let me go back and
Yeah.
reteach it. I didn't get to do that because
Yeah.
of time. But they were like, oh, wait, miss, what was that one? So they were in it, but I don't think that they are able, they're more looking at their grade. That's what they care about, not so much as, did I understand
Yeah.
this?
So they got it right or wrong, but the process of, I wonder maybe
Learning
that we
things.
can think about that, not now, but we can think about how could you incorporate that into your lesson? A time for them to notice what they got wrong and to go back and work it out. And that would require you to stretch this out so that you're not cramming it in because you need more time for that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you think that that would be something valuable for them to
Oh,
walk
it
out.
is.
So, okay. There's a few more on here. Did you feel that the activity was relevant?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. How about number 7? Provide
Pardon
the
the
students.
interruption, teachers and staff. We're ready for the students who come and get food bags to come to Mr. Martinez's room in room 108. Room 108 in Mr. Martinez's room. If you can release those students who get food bags. We don't have passes today. If you can just send those students who get food bags to room 108. Thank you.
Okay. So the lesson was relevant. And what about the next one here? Student interactions. Obviously the kids were interacting.
Mm-hmm.
So the entire lesson was set up with that in mind. But were they structured interactions? Or what could have been done differently to structure those interactions?
And maybe I could have given them like prompts, like questions to ask. Because a lot of times, like, I have a question, I don't understand something. What was happening is like they didn't trust their friends, but they're like, oh, I'm smarter than my friend, so my friend doesn't know. So they just immediately would raise their hand and call for me. And then I'd have to go, did you ask so-and-so? They'd be like, yes, that'd be so-and-so. What did they ask?
Yeah.
And so maybe I could give like, these are your questions that you need to be able to ask each other to bounce back off ideas, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
As far as
I
the
agree with
structure.
that. Somehow to where or within the 5 minutes where you'd allot some time within that where the whole class would be sort of forced to, like, if the class was divided into two different groups, right? If there were group numbers, right, 1s and 2s, then you could possibly, in the middle of that 5 minutes, you could possibly have structured it to where, okay, right now I want the 1s talk to 2s, and then the 2s talk to 1s, and create sort of a scenario where you are sort of in control of that structured interaction instead of just leaving it up to them during that time. Because sometimes, although I thought that the kids did a really good job, even the kids, like one kid would be doing the work, the other kid would be sort of guiding, but it wasn't structured. It wasn't like the 1s were going to do this work and the 2s are going to help them, or the 2s are going to do this work. So I think that maybe just structuring it a little bit would raise that. You'd be able to control that a little bit more. So anyways, we'll go on. Let's see, how about the next one on inducing curiosity and suspense?
I don't know about all that.
No, I don't think so. But they were, again, it was relevant and they paid attention, so I think that was the important thing there. Providing kids choices, I don't think that really applied. They didn't really have a choice as to the problems that they were solving, nor
Right.
was it really necessary. You gave them choices as to what group they were going to be in, which I think, again, set up the success of that activity. Because it wasn't like, I've heard other people say, well, I'm afraid of partnering my kids up because half the time they don't like half the kids in the class or whatever. I've heard that before. And that was just off the table in your lesson. It just didn't even apply. They were all paying attention. Okay, so let's just move on. Oh, the last one here is number 12 is the game light. Was there sort of a game-like atmosphere to the activity?
Not really, but no, not really.
Well, I thought there was. I thought it was lighthearted. I mean, it was very focused, and they were getting good quality work in. But I felt like the whole time, them being able to answer the questions with their handhelds, and also the way it was being recorded, I got the vibe that they didn't resent doing the work. It was kind of I felt that there was sort of a kind of a free game-like atmosphere to that, you know. So it's kind of like playing Jeopardy with the kids and preparing them for some sort of test. That's kind of the feel that I got in the group. Okay, the next section on here is the lesson structure and pacing. You want to just go through this for me?
The lessons start promptly. Yeah, you know, for the
Yep.
most part. The structure is coherent with beginning, middle, end, and time for reflection. If it was not a time for reflection, no. As far as beginning, middle, and end, beginning instruction, middle, and end, yeah.
It was a different activity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pacing is brisk, yeah.
Yeah.
Provides many opportunities for individual students who progress at different learning rates.
The fact that you had them in pairs
You think that helps it?
allowed the lower learners to be at a higher level. They were paying attention. The questions that were being asked them were higher level.
Mhm.
Some were kind of middle level, but most seemed to be higher level. And I thought that was structured, and I thought that because you were working in pairs, that created sort of a scaffolding for the lower level kids. So
Okay.
I feel it was.
Alright, good job.
Yeah, good job to you.
Alright.
All right, next section.
Routines. Those are
Routines.
good.
The routine was seamless. It was perfect.
Thank you. Instructional time is, no, I didn't think any instructional time was lost during transitions as they rotated. They knew, like, let's go. And
So-
plus, being timed with this class was the 5 minutes. They're like, oh, like, come on, like, they wanted to, like, hurry up because she's fixing to start the timer, and you taking your sweet time, moving to the next station
Yeah.
is causing me to lose time to do
Right.
work.
No, I thought
Okay, I'll kinda-
overall the lesson structure and pacing was right on. All right, so questioning, and I didn't. This is the part that really, if there was a section, and I don't know if it was. We talked briefly off camera about like, well, the activity really didn't lend. It wasn't like a whole group activity where you were eliciting a bunch of. You were asking questions, different levels of questions, and eliciting responses and stuff. It wasn't one of those lessons. So I don't know how relevant this entire section is, but I'll let you tell me if there's anything in this section that you could kind of bring, you know, that you feel that you could have improved on. Okay.
Okay, I'm just gonna skim through here. One thing that I've always struggled with is the wait time.
Yeah.
So that's probably, no, I think I might have done better just because I'm trying not to baby them and just, okay, it's this, you know, blurt it out, make them think.
Make them process.
Mm-hmm.
I think this activity did that. I think I think a lot of this section was you put thought up front into that activity with the level of questions, with the partners that they were in, and with the amount of time that you gave them in each section. You mentioned that you had in one class you had tried 6 minutes or 5 minutes, and so you had kind of played with that. So did you feel, as far as like the structure of that, was that enough time for them to answer the questions that were on there?
I feel like it was just because, okay, so one station was more rigorous than the next one. And
Yeah.
so you're going to finish this one pretty quickly, so you're still going to have like 3 minutes remaining. So instead of you sitting here, you need to get the work done. And I purposely did that because I didn't want to have a whole bunch of kids just sitting around.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I think it did. And they were able to finish for the most part from one station to the next.
So the wait time, the way it was structured, was pretty good. It's pretty right on. You didn't have a lot of kids distracted, and you didn't have a lot of sections where they had a lot of extra time either.
Right.
They were right. They had to kind of hustle their way through it.
Basically, like they had to work.
Yeah.
The time was set to where they had to work. They didn't have
Yeah.
time to mess around.
That may have been why they were so focused. They knew that,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So
And time in makes them. It forces them
yeah,
to
it
be
does.
busy. So I time everything.
So this section is pretty. As far as that activity, I don't know. Not a lot of questions here or a lot of parts in here were real relevant to that activity.
Mm-mm.
But I felt overall, I thought you did a really good job with that. I don't think that's the big concern.
And that's it.
So for next cycle, the only thing that we could take away with, and you and I talked about this, is maybe you may be thinking about the structured interactions.
Mhm.
And then I'll get you some information, and you tell me what you think, how you can maybe structure it to where you could get them talking in a structured way.
I already know your idea of how you said your ones and your twos. I could do that, but instead of doing like a big, huge review, I need to narrow it down to maybe just one specific objective, and it's just amp the rigor in it for
Well,
sure to
or-
make them to make them think. I mean, because at this point, they should know their stuff, and so I don't need to start down. I
Right.
need to stay up high because this is where you should be at, and this is where it's going to be at on May whatever when they test
Yeah.
again. So
So the structured interaction piece, and what about aligning it to where they know what standard it is that they're covering? Would that, you think that would be fair?
and then I could actually post that instead of creating a huge list of here are all the standards we're going to cover
Right.
because they're not going to read that.
No.
I don't want to read it.
Right.
So
That would be more applicable to what they're, and you can even say to them, these are the big standards that you need to cover. If you get this down, you're passing that test.
right.
These are the ones you, and that also would, maybe, what do you think, would that give them a chance to say, well, gosh, you know, I don't have to know it all. I just, if I just know this stuff, I'll pass this thing.
Yeah, and actually it's funny because they're like, Miss, after, we're not supposed to talk about the test, but whatever, they were saying, you could have taught us slope all year long, slope and functions, and we would have passed. There was only a few volume and a few surface area. You said there'd be a lot, and so they were like, telling me. I was like, really? So anyway.
Did you get a chance, you don't get a chance to see the test.
No, it's so hard. I'm like, okay, just keep walking. So yeah.
But that's good information.
It is really good. But it's crazy because my kids are saying one thing, and then Thomas's kids are saying another thing.
Oh, okay.
And like there was hardly any slope in there,
Yeah.
and a whole bunch of volume, and it's weird.
But the district provides you with standards and the percent of
Mhm.
questions that are based on that standard.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
you have a good sense going in of what you're gonna have to spend more time on.
Right, and that's how we were able to,
Yeah.
do our review and stuff.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time again.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate it.
Mhm.